It's optional. On a voice-only podcast, it's optional.
Okay, so nope, we are echoing.
That's a rough echo.
There we go. Nope.
I hear you fine. And can they hear me? Okay, I'll do my best. This is Robert's topic for the most part, but like he was trying to say, it's about how to make food last long term. And the question came, how could you make your own MREs? And I know he had somewhere to go with that, and I'm not 100% sure. So I'll continue on with my initial thoughts with that, because I have definitely eaten MREs, and I have varying opinions on them. But one of the things, of course, with an MRE is that they are almost indefinitely. No, they have an expiry date. I know that a lot of people buy them because they're getting close to expiry. In the military, you would let some go. So they have a longevity, probably slightly less than tin food and stuff like that. But they're more or less ready to made food. And the nice thing is they come in easily disposed of containers. So Mylar styles, envelopes, and cardboard boxes. So basically, as the military uses them, they can oftentimes just burn them up or dispose of them pretty quickly.
Okay, no, still echoing.
No. So
I have no idea why I'm echoing, Ben. I know you can hear me.
Yeah. So for me, and the thing I'll go on with, if I was to create something like an MRE, I would start with dehydrating. And you could dehydrate food, but I think one of the things Robert would bring up is fatty foods will go rancid. So you have to really try to find leaner meats, leaner things that you're going to dehydrate, things that don't have a lot of natural oils and stuff in it. And when you dehydrate those meals, the nice thing is anything you make yourself, you can actually add your own spices. And the spices generally won't cause the food to go bad early or anything like that. And then the thing to do, if you can, is to remove as much oxygen from the bag as possible. So things like vacuum sealers and anything that can consume oxygen. So maybe something that would consume oxygen, like desiccants, and get rid of the oxygens and moisture would be useful. And then, just like most food, if you can keep it cold. So MREs, believe it or not, to the best of my knowledge, are good frozen. Like you can keep them in a fridge or a frozen state, and they will last longer before they start to go bad. It's not necessarily something you have to do, but it will help preserve it for longer. Can you fix this, Robert?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Can you still hear me, Ben?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, maybe it's on Google's side. Give me one more second, man.
So what I can talk about in the meantime, I guess, is in my longer trips. So when I go for a week or something like that, I really do have to sometimes think about the meals I'm going to take and what I want to take and how I can minimize the space and prep.
Can they hear me now? Can you hear me now there, Steve? Maybe. You can keep talking. If he can hear me, he'll jump back in.
Yeah. So one of the things I do, because you can go to Mech or Canadian Tire was selling quite a few for a while, and even Walmart. You can buy the freeze-dried meals, the camper meals that are ready to go, I guess is really what they are. But you'll find that they're quite expensive. You're looking at probably $15 to $20 on average Canadian for a meal, which is getting into restaurant category when you're trying to camp, and I like to keep my meals a little bit cheaper than that. So
okay, I
I
think they can hear
found
me now, Ben. So if they can, hopefully
awesome.
I'm back into here. I had to switch mics. I don't know what's going on, why that one's echoing, but let's see if this
Okay.
corrected the issue, hopefully.
Okay. So you heard what I was saying, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you want to go back to MREs for a bit, or?
Yeah, that's kind of where this all started off. Like I said, it's more how do you make an MRE last? Basically what Ben was saying, and we can talk about dehydrating and excuse me. Yeah, and to your point about the the rancid oils and stuff, like we started there, absolutely good. So let's just keep rolling with your idea, and then I'll jump back in because I kind of threw myself out of order right this second. Let me
So
compose
yeah,
in my head how to get back in here.
so one of the things I'll often do when I'm looking to find easy to meals to take is I'll go to your regular grocery store, and I'll go down like your dry food envelope aisles. So one's Knorr, Lipton, Sidekicks, um, canned foods. All these foods really last quite a long. You can get some foods, like you can now sometimes get tuna and spam. I've seen in like tinfoil style envelopes, Mylar style envelopes.
Yeah.
If you can find those, they're harder to find. They're not as common, and I've had a little bit more luck finding them in the States than I have in Canada. But every now and then I find them, so they do exist. But you can make a really solid meal. Rices, the Ben's packaged rices, add water, boil it. They work really fast. They're very convenient.
No, 100%. And at the dollar store now, you can actually get some of those too. I'm coming
Yeah.
from my notes here. I don't know. Actually, I threw it out because it expired. I bought some to try and I ended up not eating them and they went way past. But anyway, yeah, you can find them at the dollar store and they're microwavable. But as Ben was saying, all you really got to do is heat up some water, like a small pot of water, set the container I just set the whole package inside it. Maybe not boil it, but come to a rolling boil, shut off, remove from heat, and then set package inside. Leave it for like 5-6 minutes, and you come back to a nice hot pasta meal. Pastas in general, getting back to the MRE, they're a great thing to put in MREs because they are shelf stable to begin with, and you can make them even more shelf stable in your MREs with putting them in like a vacuum sealed pouch or Mylar pouch with some oxygen absorbers. And then you can throw in some like dehydrated sauces and things like that, and you'll be good for a couple of months off something like that. And essentially, you're making the same thing. The only benefit to the ones you're getting from the dollar store, ready in 6 minutes, versus basically you have to cook the pasta, add your sauce, rehydrate. You're going to be into it for a little bit longer, but it is cheaper. So, I mean, there is trade-offs there. So I guess one of the main points I wanted to make, and sorry, now I'm starting to recollect my thoughts here, is what are we calling long-term? Because long-term to me, long-term to you, and long-term to somebody else, different options here. Because when I think long-term, I'm thinking like 30 days plus. You know what I mean? That's long-term to me. Any less than that, you're just out for a camping expedition. You know what I mean? But realistically, long-term to somebody else might only be a week.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, the line there gets pretty blurry, but few people do a camping trip without some kind of resupply or something along those lines for those lines, simply because carrying 2-3 weeks worth of food at any given time is a lot of food to be carrying, right? Even if you think you can fully dehydrate all your food like to a minimum and get each day's food down to say half a pound, which I think is pretty impressive. At 30 days, you're still talking about 15 plus pounds of food. And that's going to be bulky. That's going to be really hard. So as you get into longer term storage solutions, you're also going to have to find ways of supplementing this. The exception to this is if you have like a stationary camp, like a cabin in the woods or a long-term camp that you're going to set up in. And yes, you could bring in foods, but then bulk and weight matter way less to you. So where is your line for that? Like, I mean, you can go to your store and get a lot of non-perishables. And if you have the room and space, what you're going to have to do is get some good airtight sealed containers, something you can lock, and you're still going to have to worry about things like rodents and stuff getting into it. So if that's what you're thinking, like a stable, like a cache of food in the woods, now we're getting into, I guess, prepping territory.
Which is, it can go hand in hand with bushcrafting, not specifically what we talk about on this channel, though we do brush against it sometimes, much like tonight. I don't think we'll wander down that of like, storing in old rain barrels and stuff like that. But if that's your thing, highly encouraged. I mean, go for it.
Oh,
If
yeah.
that's what makes you happy, by all means. But I'm thinking more like just the small things. And you made the point for me is long term can be defined by how much are you willing to carry for your adventure. Because regardless of how you process this food, dehydrate it, whatever, still takes bulk, still takes weight. And eventually, however long you're going out, if you're carrying everything, you're either going to run out of room or run out of stamina. And you kind of have to trade off for that, which also comes into play with how you can preserve some of this food as you're going. And that's kind of where the MRE project came up from there. But getting back to your, like, if you have a stationary camp, which was also involved in the conversation, there's a lot of other things you can do that way too. You can do some pickling and things like that, canned goods, and you can store it there and it's good to go. If you're going to get into pickling or canning and stuff like that, I do suggest you do your research and do it properly, because there's proper ways and improper ways. Make things are sterilized, and botulism's a bugger. So, you know what I mean? Just make sure before you try. I highly encourage it, but there is a right and a wrong way to get into it.
Well,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to throw out there, if you're going to get into that, there's a few things you're going to need, and probably might as well keep those at the camp too. And one of them is a pressure cooker. The other thing is copious amounts of both salt and sugars. And I state this because I started thinking about growing up, as you mentioned, a lot of this stuff, and we preserved a lot of food. Like, that was a common thing growing up, to preserve food for the winter. Because we got like moose and berries and gardens and stuff, and your vegetables and all that would be rotten by spring if you didn't do something to preserve them. And so we dried fish, we smoked meat, we made jerkies and stuff like that, but we also froze a lot of stuff. And if you have the ability to freeze, that's obviously a really good option. And long term, if you're talking multiple years, what you need to do is gain yourself a lot of sawdust. And you
Yes.
want Right? And you know what I'm talking about. You're going to dig a hole somewhere, you're going to fill it with sawdust, and then in the winter, you're going to get yourself a ton of ice, and you're going to stick down there and then cover it in that sawdust, and then cover that with something so that it doesn't heat up, and you'll have ice for year round. And then what you can do is store food that you froze in the winter and get it through the summer. And that should get you from one fall to the next.
And
You know what I mean?
classically enough, that is exactly how freezers were. They were called ice chests. Well, ice chests you brought in the house. They were a chest that had
Yeah.
ice in it. But ice cellars or ice rooms or cold rooms, whatever you want to call them, that's exactly what it was done. You found the local mill. Well, first, you and your family dug a hole. And I don't mean a hole straight down, though that will work. You basically make a root cellar. Then you throw some sawdust in, you put some ice in, you throw some sawdust in, you put some ice in. And basically all this has to be about 4 feet underground where the temperature stabilizes, and this will stay cold for long periods of time. I do remember doing this too as I was a kid. My grandparents still had a cold room. One of the mills that my grandmother worked at, they had a cellar, a root cellar under the cookhouse, and it had a cold room in it because they used to get the ice from the river that was beside it, and it was a sawmill. They had the sawdust. It was how they used refrigeration. Yes, there was refrigerators, but it was just convenient because it worked. It was proven to work. It was low maintenance, and everything was on hand. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And if you lost power, you still had ice. Like, it didn't change anything.
that was the beauty of the cookhouse. It had the cold room, and it was all propane operated. Propane lights, the whole works.
Yeah. And I mean, when power is iffy, and it still is iffy in places in this world today, these methods still work. They're still valid. There are still places in this world that use this method to today. They're fewer and further between and stuff, but there are places that they'll still cut ice out in the winter, and they'll preserve it for most of the year so they can pull it out and use it as they need. And they preserve a lot of food that way. Newfoundlanders had the capelin and the cod, and we used to salt and dry and eat that food later. And by covering things in salt, what you're doing is you're sucking the moisture out of it. And with no moisture, bacteria and things don't exist. And with your jams and your jellies and your preserves, the more sugar you put in it, it also prevents bacteria, weirdly enough.
Yeah, it's concentrations at that point. Because
Yeah.
it's counterintuitive. Sugars actually feed a lot of bacteria and things like that. So Anyway, there's a proper way, once again, to do all that. And then I remember my grandmother still making jams, like much like I'm sure your parents and grandparents did when winter was roll around in the fall. We'd harvest whatever berry wasn't basically eaten by the birds. And that's when you got like mixed berry jam. It was basically everything that was left over with any kind of sweetness to it. And then you'd throw some pectin in it, a bunch of sugar, and throw it in some jars. Kind of digress from the topic, but that was kind of fun jumping down memory lane. I kind of forgot about all that. This year, I actually want to get into making like mustard pickles, bread and butter pickles, and preserves, jams, and stuff like that. That's my project for this year.
So the two things there that I understand, and there are people way better at this, is one, if you hit a certain acidic level, and that's why vinegar, a lot of your pickling and stuff, and I have a taste aversion to strong vinegar, so I don't really like this stuff. But I fully understand the point here. And then there's the fermentations, and the fermentations is you're allowing a bacteria to grow that is not harmful, that basically prevents anything else from living there. So they make a non-safe environment for other bacterias, and by fermenting food, basically turning it to like an alcohol as a fermentation, you preserve food that way. And so a lot of food is done that way. And you talked about some of them, kimchi and
Sauerkraut's the
sauerkraut.
other big one I can think of.
But this, and there's a lot of like helpful bacteria involved in that, and people eat that to be healthier. So these methods definitely work, but are they good for camping and day-to-day bushcraft? Absolutely, in its own way. I mean, I've brought bottled mooses and stuff camping many a time.
Yep,
And
canned
it's a
meats.
wonderful thing, right?
It's wonderful if you can do it and you get the room and the weight to carry that stuff around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But there are short-term things, like we talked a few years ago when I had chickens. The beauty of the chickens was fresh laid eggs that have not been, the shell hasn't been cleaned. They will last well over a month. So I can do a month-long camping trip and take eggs. I just have to protect them.
Yep.
You can preserve eggs for over a year if you store them in an oxygen-deprived environment. And so they used to keep eggs either completely sunk underwater, or, and I've also heard of putting like oil on the top because it sits up there and prevents anything from getting to the water. Just keeping them in flour or other fine powders, because oxygen just can't get through the powder, and it just creates this
I was going to say, I've seen them stored
oxygen-deprived
in salt because that doubles it. You know what I mean? One, it's an oxygen deprived environment, and two, it's salt, which also works as a preserving agent. Which you mentioned smoking and stuff like that, smoking, salting, dehydrating, jerkying, all other great ways. And easy ways you can do at home for like a short term of a week or so without a whole lot of risk. You know what I mean? Smoke fish, it'll last about a week. Homemade beef jerky that you can do in your oven or your air fryer or dehydrator if you have one, you're going to get about a week out of that. And you can play around with the flavor profiles on these things too and get some really delicious stuff. That was my go-to for like if I was going out on a multi-day or a multi-week adventure. I loved jerkying meat and taking that with me as kind of a calorie boost, and because it was a little saltier, it kind of kept the muscle cramps and stuff down, you know what I mean? And it was something to do. You kind of chew on it a little bit, and you know what I mean? It was kind of like that. It was the cigarette for the non-smoker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had the same things. Salt tends to be the thing I need a little bit more in the woods. You sweat, you do things, and all of a sudden you cramp up. Summer sausages, baby bells, like cheeses that are covered in waxes. I mean, that's originally, I think, why cheeses existed, is because the milk wouldn't last long enough, but cheese would last much longer. Certain cheeses are much more long-term than others. Generally, I think the harder cheeses last a little bit longer than the softer cheeses.
The harder, older cheese lasts for a long time.
Yeah. And so all these things are great methods. Your big thing is like weight and space. Like, I mean, it's our bane for everything we've ever done, right? You only have so much weight and so much space that you can take, at which point you have to start offsetting things. But if you can build these skills, a lot of this can be done in the field. You can dry meats in the field. You can produce salt in the field if you know what you're doing. It's difficult. It's time consuming. There's resources involved in that. But if you have access to salt water, you have access to almost infinite amount of salt.
So I have actually done this, and I can attest to it takes a long damn time. Taking a big pan, like a big pan, probably 3 feet across, down by the ocean, super hot, sunny day, and pouring water on it until it'll evaporate off to leave salt residue behind. And I thought, oh, what a cool way to come up with some quick salt. Everything
No.
was wrong with that statement.
Yeah. So what you need, in my opinion, is a large pot. This is my theory, and it's not a proven theory. And you fill it up and you keep it near the fire, so it's boiling it off at a much higher rate. And as the salt builds up, you add a little bit of water each time, not at a fast rate. And the concentration stays up high enough that if it's super concentrated, the salt crystallizes quicker. But to build up like a quantity of salt, like a gallon or more of salt, you're talking about a significant volume of water. Like it's akin to maple syrup. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely. I worked all day for less than a handful of salt. Just so
yeah.
we're clear, all day for less, like, you know what I mean? Like more than a
But
pinch, probably like
otherwise,
a tablespoon and a half of salt.
otherwise you'd just be able to pull it off the beaches. You know what I mean? Like at the end of every day, there'd be like piles of salt you could just scoop up, but that's not how it works. And there's places that salt accumulates. Like you can find like salt lakes and things like that. Those exist, but most of us aren't going to be near those. And there is natural places to find salt in the woods. Animals can do it. We suck at finding that. But you can produce it. But if you already have fire going and you're heating things all winter and you just keep doing it, you can produce a quantity of salt to help yourself with that.
And you can double dip into that because the same way that you're boiling that off for salt, you can reaccumulate that water for fresh drinking water. So one, you're building a distill with the byproducts of clean drinking water and table salt you can use for preserving and stuff. So if you are talking incredibly long term and you have access to unlimited salt water by being by an ocean, totally worth setting up some sort of distilling device for both of those resources. Because let's face it, we've talked about this before. Without water, you got like what, 2 days? The rule of twos. It used to be threes, but I think they dropped it to the rule of twos now. It's 2 hours without shelter and adverse conditions, 2 days without water, 2 weeks without food, or something like that.
Probably. Some of us will last longer than others.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll probably last a good 4 weeks if I had to guess without food, but no.
Yeah.
Actually, a comment from the side here. It's very hot, Melissa. My office is absolutely boiling, as you can tell with my face here. We had this scorching hot weather. As to what Danny was saying over here, good old sunburn weather. We had what was called a frying pan event where the temperature surged to plus 36 from being like
Oh, wow.
15 for a while. And then it's going to drop immediately back down tomorrow. Anyway, from the comments, good idea for a future show. And only reason I want to say this because we're getting a little late in our show, believe it or not. Forgotten ways of the old days. And I can guarantee you that me and you could talk about that one, Ben.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're truly interested in that, I'd be happy to have a talk about that next week. We could talk once again, like about cold rooms. We talked about thunderboxes before. We could revisit that one. We could talk about preserving and pickling and canning. And a bunch of other stuff that's kind of lost to time really quickly. If you guys are interested in that completely, sure. You know what? I miss talking about that stuff. That's the kind of stuff my grandfather used to show me. Even my father really never went to that level. It was always my grandfather that showed me that stuff. What about you, Ben?
Similarly along, I mean, my grandparents had a lot of that old tech still, and granddad knew about a lot of it. Some of it we didn't have. Like I knew people with root cellars, and there was probably access to them. We didn't have as much of that set up, but I understood the concept. I know how you could do it, and it's something I've always been interested in doing. It's just, you know, we've gotten to the point now in time where a lot of people have less and less land, and utilizing it in those ways isn't the way. But for years, you had a fire going 9 months of the year on the East Coast, you know, and many times in the evenings, like even in the summer months, you would still have a fire going. And I remember my grandparents taking me to a town called Somerville. And that's because there was a winter town and a summer town, and people lived in both of those towns, depending on the time of year.
I remember that stuff. I never was, but I remember that stuff.
Some houses had a summer kitchen and a winter kitchen, and the winter kitchen was usually more internal in the center of the house, and you would run that in the winter because it helped keep the rest of the house hot. And the summer kitchen was usually like in a sunroom or out on the edge of the house because you didn't want to cook everyone that was trying to sleep into the house.
And I'm going with that design in my property, American Mish, believe it or not. I'm
Mm.
having an inside-outside kitchen, or a summer and winter kitchen. And we'll talk about all this next week. So yeah, why don't we plan on that for next week, Ben? Well, we're already on here. Makes for a great topic.
Old,
Um,
old tech.
yeah,
Yeah.
old tech in modern ways, or old tech in modern days. There you go. But kind of getting back to the main point here. So let's talk about some easy ways to make some MREs that are going to last a long time. So like we said from the get-go, grab stuff that's already shelf stable and stabilize it longer. So your rices, oats, pastas, things like that, throw them in a Ziploc with some oxygen absorbers. That's going to be okay. But if you can vacuum seal them or Mylar them, that's going to keep out UV, a lot more oxygen, and you throw an oxygen absorber in there, now you've basically quadrupled the shelf life of that stuff right out of the gate. You can also, like Ben said, go to the dollar store, get some of those pre-made pastas and rices and stuff like that. And if you don't want to deal with their packaging, which I will say is already air sealed, so don't mess with it if you don't have to. But if you wanted to, you could break that down and re-put it into some sort of MRE in a smaller form. Like, I know those great big bags only have about this much pasta in the bottom of them. So if weight and size was an issue, you can reseal them in smaller containers and still be just as good. Or you can combine multiple of them into one container and transport that. The only thing I would mention with that is you got to be careful with like the powdered mixes. It's real easy to get one bowl that's going to be nothing but noodles and one that is going to be nothing but powder mix. So one's going to be really bland and one's going to be so much flavor, burn your tongue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, dry things that are wet, like you can do dehydrations and stuff like that. Like I said, vacuum seal. And the thing is, we have good vacuum sealers that are available to the average consumer. If you don't want to pay new, go to the thrift store. There's almost always one or two in a thrift store.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I
I've
bought
looked,
my vacuum sealer for $10 from a neighbor's yard sale. I seen it from my
yeah.
upstairs window and walked down and bought it.
So and then like pressure cookers. Now, I just want to warn people about pressure cookers. If you don't know how to use a pressure cooker, be very careful because they do sometimes explode.
Yes.
Uh,
Watch your YouTube videos, read instructions, tread carefully. They're a great thing. Just
yeah.
much like any other tool, tools can do harm if misused.
Yeah, I think pea soup was the one. People used to do pea soup growing up, and the peas would get into the little pressure release, and that's what you have. You have a weight sitting over a pressure valve, and if it plugs it up, the steam inside of it, because it's a little steam engine, it just gets built higher and higher pressure, and at some point the pot can't handle it, and the lid breaks, and it goes everywhere.
Yep.
And you can seriously damage a home or a person if they're close to it. So, all that technology came with its risks and rewards, and it's nice to understand how to do it. And like you said, prepping all your materials, like getting your jars perfectly clean and safe before you start. It's a process. Making sure when you're fermenting food that you're doing it in a way that you are growing the good bacteria and you're not just creating botulism. So
In all cases, if you can find somebody that's already done it and knows how to do it, learn by demonstration. It's not like they have to teach you 100 different times for you to catch on to this stuff. A lot of it, well, one, if you have the opportunity to do it 100 times, absolutely soak up as much information as you can. But two, a lot of this stuff, if you see it once, makes a lot more sense than just reading it or YouTubing it and stuff like that, because there is some fine little nuances that can get left out real easy that make a big difference.
yeah, and the thing is, there is some really good literature on all this stuff. Like there are plenty of books and tutorials and things you can get that covers all these processes. And by no means think that Ben and Robert are the best source for this, because we are not. We are not the experts in this, but we have played with it. We've had opportunities and we've seen it done. And this is the technology that I think might help answer this question, is going back and looking at how that technology worked can really help you figure out how you can do some of this stuff, right?
No, 100%. But that seems like a good place to kind of end tonight's episode. We are at the 30-minute mark, though I do know the first 5 minutes was me echoing through it, and Ben had to cover the cover my hide again, and I appreciate that. But let's plan for next week to talk about old technologies in the modern day, and we'll make a good list there. And they said examples if we can do it. Might be hard pressed, but I'll see what we come up with. If nothing else, I'll try and find some pictures and we can flash those up. Because some of the stuff that I'm thinking of, like, you can't really show how to make a cold room, and I'm thinking root cellars and some other stuff. And I don't know how to do examples off them, but leave it with me. I got a week. I'll see what I can figure out. Maybe make something small scale, or maybe there's some other smaller things that might be more appropriate. But yeah,
Anyways,
just a quick topic there tonight. Like I said, it was more to answer a question that was asked before. Sometimes that's where our episodes come from. Maybe boring for some folks, but other folks, you know what? It hopefully answered some questions. I know when I was looking at this stuff, I looked at a lot of stuff, thought I knew a lot of stuff, and then it came down to, you know what? There is a lot of information out there, but there's some basic concepts, which hopefully we cover most of them here tonight, that once you get them, you really got to kind of make your own journey and learn as you go. Just be safe doing it. Have some fun. And if you guys come up with some great recipes or ideas, tips, and tricks, report back to us. We love to expand our repertoires as well. And trust me, I love trying new things. Whenever I can get around to it, I'll grab an idea that I see or somebody's offered to me, and I genuinely like trying it, providing it makes sense. I have had a couple things come across that was obviously fake and trolling. Not cool, folks. Any final thoughts, Ben?
No, get out there, have fun. We'll see you next week.